So here we are, everybody, in the Dragonfly Den. This is going to be my first update inside of the Notorious Frogs metaverse. If you guys are unfamiliar with this is just a really cool metaverse project. It's one that I'm personally invested in, have been invested in from the very beginning, from the mint. And I'm really excited to bring you guys this video because I've been in the talks with these guys for a couple months now. You know, really excited to kind of showcase some of the things that they're creating. Something I want to jump more into on the channel, talking more about NFTs, more about the metaverse, and some of the things that I foresee having a lot of value. And, you know, metaverse to me is something I haven't talked a lot on the channel, but I see a lot of money in it. I'm personally invested in it. And Frogland is, in my opinion, my favorite NFT community out there. It's my personal favorite when it comes to metaverse. And so for today's video, I'm going to be walking around with Snoop Frog. We're going to go through, he's going to kind of show me around in their demo, and we're going to kind of talk, ask some questions, and then, yeah, just kind of go from there. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you so much for having me, Snoop Frog.
Thank you very much for joining us, D.I.Y.
Yeah, looking forward.
Got to say, it's an absolute pleasure to have you in here. Lovely. So yeah, welcome to the Dragonfly Social Club. As I like to say, it's the most hoppinest place we have in New Pangaea. For those who don't know, New Pangaea is the name of the entire metaverse that we're co-creating with our community. The reason I say co-creating is because as you walk around this Dragonfly Social Club, you will see a lot of creativity, a lot of which has come directly from our community. If we have a little wander across, you can see, first and foremost, we have a menu placed. On this menu, you can actually go into first-person view by right-clicking, or if you're on a laptop, you can two-finger click to get a slightly better view. And everything that you see on this menu here is actually names for sort of frog-related or notorious-related drinks and beverages and snacks, a lot of which have some chicken names, and there's a reason for that I'll explain when we go through to the other room. But ultimately, the idea was we want to build a product, and we want to break the mold for how products themselves, how content is created, really leveraging what Web3 technology can bring to the space. And that is effectively bringing together incredibly talented people who are passionate about building a better future, who are also not that impressed with how the Web2 world has been operating. So, for those unfamiliar, traditionally when you build a video game, you have to go and put together a pitch deck. You need to go and pitch to a bunch of investors who probably don't even play a video game and try to convey the magnitude of what you want to build. And only upon getting their approval do you raise the funding, but you then go away for sort of a couple of years and you start developing pretty much in secrecy. At which point you then release a product to the world and you hope that that product is well received. But the very nature of Web3 has put this model on its head. And effectively, the world that you see around us is a vertical slice. It is not the completed metaverse, but it is what we managed to release to our community after 90 short days of selling the collection out. So effectively, we work with our members of our community, which primarily is focused in Discord, to figure out the look, the feel, the style. Here's Don Love. And the aesthetic for this 1930s gangster frog world that we're calling Frogland. Don Love is actually one of our founders. He's just grabbing a quick bite to eat, and we're just opening the door for, I think, what I would not be surprised is some pepperoni pizza, given the fact that we all met on a project called Rare Pizzas. In fact, the entire founding team, if you're familiar with Rare Pizzas, that was our first project we cut our teeth on, taught us a great deal about the space, and became the big motivation for what we're trying to build here.
And what was that? Go into a little detail on that, I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rare Pizzas was a fascinating project, and we started it about probably 14 months ago. But the idea was to build a project that would help feed people pizza. Of course, pizza is a human right. We believe it's a distribution problem, not a scarcity problem. So we created an NFT collection of 10,000 rare pizzas, and we used 51% of the proceeds gained from selling these NFTs to go to feed hungry people around the world. And on Bitcoin Pizza Day, on May 22nd, we actually held the world's largest pizza party. It spanned across 60 different countries in 5 continents, and effectively involved sending money to pizza shops that were onboarded by the community. And every time someone called up to order a pizza, they were told that your pizza's been paid for courtesy of Rare Pizzas.
Wow.
So it's effectively what we call the Pizza DAO, and has been a really fascinating project which really showed all of the founding members of Frogland that you can build incredible technology and products with a community and rely on the community themselves to provide the funding and then be able to do noble things. And so initially, Rare Pizzas, the idea was, can we feed people free pizza? And that model was proved very successfully, and ultimately taught us what we needed to know to put together the project that you're now seeing in front of you, something that we call Frogland.
See, that's really cool. And that's kind of what I've noticed is a lot of people are taking that model where they're using the community to kind of fund all of this fun stuff that they want to create. And that's why with, kind of getting into NFTs, you never really know which of these communities is going to be doing the things that they set out to originally do. Kind of a hot little term nowadays with the NFT communities is just to kind of say that they're going to do all this stuff and really focus on community, but then they get the money and just kind of leave and let the community die out. And so, it's really cool to see that there are projects that genuinely see the model, believe in it, and then they actually, kind of continue out with their long-term visions and projections, because we can see how powerful a community is. I mean, we've seen so many of these NFT projects go from absolutely nothing to having multi-millions of dollars to fund, really amazing stuff. And I think that you guys are a prime example of that. I mean, you look around and you look at the other metaverses and stuff, and I mean, realistically, the ones I've seen, I've only been in one other one that was even comparable, but the other was kind of like two-dimensional, like basic video game stuff, whereas we get in this and we look around and there's just so much detail everywhere. It's like you can really genuinely see which communities are going to spend the time on developing the project and then which ones don't. I mean, you just takes 5 minutes to look around and it's pretty obvious that you guys are really doing something that nobody else is for the most part.
Thank you. It really is a very good point. I mean, we believe very much in this space that integrity and a moral compass is what's needed to drive this technology, and not only Frogland, but the Web3 space in general forwards. A great way to do research. I mean, we hear D.I.Y, do your own research, time and time again in this space. But realistically, what does it mean to do research, to do your due diligence? And primarily, you need to look at the team. Is this a doxed team? Is it an undoxed team? Incidentally, Frogland's team is entirely doxed. We have come from various verticals of the entertainment and the technology space. I myself have been developing virtual reality hardware with companies like NVIDIA and Samsung and Mattel for a great number of years, and we're about to release a Web3 games console that will feature a number of different metaverses on the device. One of our Web3 engineers, his day job before getting into the Web3 space was building a hack-proof cryptographic voting machine for the US government that Microsoft was investing into. We have Don Love, one of our lead engineers. Don Love, do you want to give yourself a quick intro?
Hi. Sorry, my food just arrived, so I was stuffing my face. Nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you as well.
Yeah, I guess Snoop was doing intros. I came from like the power and utilities sector. So energy technology, used to build software, co-founded the company building software specifically dealing with like energy meter data, water meter data,
okay.
Doing billing and such for municipalities. And then just before COVID hit, decided to make a change. And I mean, I'd been interested in and doing stuff in crypto for like years before. So it kind of ended up being the perfect time then when COVID hit that I did a reevaluation. I was like, hey, let me take a look at what's going on. I haven't looked that closely in a while. And then things started going crazy, and DeFi summer started happening, and it became my full time. Yeah, and yeah, met all these wonderful people at Rare Pizzas. Still, a lot of actually, there's quite a few people in our community early from there, and we're still all very supportive of that project as well. But yeah, we to build Frogland, and now we're on that journey.
And I'll say that, congratulations on all the success so far. This has been, exciting to see from somebody that was there from the mint and was there from the very beginning when the original pieces of art were coming out, and kind of seeing what the project was going to be as the website was getting built. And, to actually see you guys come through and build it all out is just really inspiring, and to be part of the community and watching it develop. Because at the beginning, Obviously, I had no idea what was going to happen, had no idea what this project really even was for the most part. And then, once everything starts to be developed and once you start to see everything released, it just goes to show that you guys genuinely care a lot about the community. But most importantly, I mean, every single one of the people building this project is very much doing big things in the normal world already, whether it was in the tech community, energy, a number of different things. And not only that, but one thing I'm super excited to hear you guys talk about is the fact that you're actually building kind of like your own Web3 metaverse device.
Yes,
sure. So I mean, so Snoop can jump into that more because it's something related, but not directly under the purview of Frogland at the moment.
Right.
In terms of the funds, we're are going towards Metaverse, not the hardware. Just to clarify that, because if we try to build too much at once, that's a sure way to stretch ourselves too thin.
So a big part of what we're building here was really to prove a model. Are we able to fund the creation of a product by a community? Instead of relying on the traditional method of raising VC capital to build out a product, can we work directly with those individuals who are most passionate about the space that would want to use the technology available to us and be almost our investors, so to speak, in this brave new world we called Web3? So as I mentioned, the remainder of the team, it's very important when doing your research and doing your due diligence to find out where teams are effectively where they've come from. Have they come from a world where they know how to execute and deliver products? And every member of the Frogland team is precisely that. They all satisfy this need to be able to build and release and stay on time and do all of the things that need to get done to actually take a product all the way through to market. So with Frogland, we started off with the simple promise of buy frog, get land. Effectively, can we fund this entire creation of a metaverse with a tremendous game development studio? In fact, they're better known as the team behind games like Wipeout and The Getaway, but probably better known for building PlayStation Home. Okay. So the idea was, let's prove a model. Let's create an NFT collection and use 50% of the proceeds from that collection to fund the development of a metaverse. And a model that we felt would be really embracing Web3 was to rely on the community themselves to provide the funding in the form of land sales. So effectively, every frog gets a free plot of land in a metaverse. And as we progress forwards, as we continue to expand out on the world that we're presently in, and we'll have a little walk around, we will continue to drive value back to the original frog holders by way of these land sales and introducing partner districts, which will effectively be an entire district that would be neighboring Frogland in this metaverse we call New Pangea, that follows the look and the feel and the aesthetics of the projects themselves. Because, of course, we've seen a lot of metaverses out there that were created before the advent of PFPs. And that really means that they don't really have that same style that we're falling in love with and we associate ourselves with the artwork itself. So Frogland, as you can see, is a 1930s gangster frog vibe, and working with a few other projects, once we've delivered the land itself, we'll start to release land sales and districts for these other projects as well, which enables the cross-pollination between different communities inside an online shared persistent space. And all of this, obviously, we're approaching a new age in the Web3 world. And we don't need to all huddle around, we can have a little run around while we talk. But ultimately, the whole idea for having a community-driven and a community-funded project has proven a model that we are able to release NFTs and use proceeds from the sale of those NFTs to build. And so with the upcoming Web3 Games console, to have a flagship metaverse such as Frogland featured on the device, we're proving that this is a better world that's moving forwards, that you don't need to rely on downloading exe files from websites alone. Right. But instead there will be with an app store that is not beholden to the Googles and the Facebooks and the Valves of the world, and instead will really embrace this Web3 content and allow people to really get the best out of it without having that risk of, am I downloading something malicious or something dodgy? So that in essence is the reason for the Frogland, and ultimately the reason that we're building a separate device, which again, just to reiterate, the device, the curved device, is a separate project to Frogland itself. Right. Frogland was a model to prove that we can build finished products with seasoned professionals who know exactly what they're doing and how to build, and then work with the community on everything that you can see around you. Everything from, for instance, over here, we have the murder site of Jimmy the Knee. So Jimmy the Knee was a story that was derived from our Discord. Every week we host these live RPG sessions. Think of it as a text-based adventure with a dungeon master who can talk through what's happening. And we have the community come up with the storylines themselves. So these Notorious Frogs, ultimately they are immortal frogs. And so it made a lot of sense for the first thing for us to do was to kill a frog and have a murder mystery about it. And this is the murder side of Jimmy the Knee. So again, to be able to work with a community to come up with a cool murder mystery storyline that started in text, that evolved into concept art, that is now a 3D world that you can walk around, is a really, really impactful thing. Because I know personally, I've been a big gamer my entire life, but I didn't have personally the experience or the expertise to build a game itself. But now we can all take a part in building a game with seasoned professionals who know how to build amazing environments and gamified elements. And with that, we can now all take part in creating something simply by buying and holding a Notorious Frog NFT.
Right.
So this is a really fun concept where everyone can get involved, and everything that you can see from the artwork on the walls to the narrative of the storylines and the nods to the heads to pieces that we've had inside our Discord have all led to this co-creation, this new way of building content. As we can see, Bullish Frog over here is reading one of our newspapers, the Daily Splat. Again, this is content that's been created by members of our community, and we update intermittently the newspapers to have more insight and more goings-on that we have inside the Discord, which we treat very much as a two-dimensional version of the metaverse itself. You can even zoom in if you're on a trackpad. You can sort of swipe up or down with two fingers to zoom in or zoom out on the newspaper itself, and you have a left and right button and sort of a put-down button so that you can sort of have a read through as and when you like. But this whole notion of co-creation is fascinating because ultimately we want more than just a few people building behind closed doors and hoping others will like it, when we can really work with those individuals to build something better.
Right.
Another great thing that we love is Madame Chopra. So in fact, you can see a fortune teller here. And if you want to, go and have a little click on her.
A hard choice lies before you. Do you upend the apple cart? Or do you stare blindly ahead, hoping that your next hop isn't into nothingness? Choose wisely.
So this is wonderful prose that's created by members of our community, and again is submitted to our game developers, to ourselves, to build into the world. And so we have probably about 50 sections of prose, so you can have your fortune read by someone who lives and breathes inside our Discord. And so, as you can see over here, it may be too much to give away, but just to make sure you're getting the full Frogland experience, we are Notorious Frogs, ultimately. And if you come and stand where I'm standing in third-person mode, you can actually clip into the walls themselves to see a fun little surprise, which I won't tell you about, but if you can pull it off, you may notice a few things hidden in the wall. So we don't want to give away all of the Easter eggs in this metaverse world, but certainly there's a lot in here, which again is all derived from conversations and dialogue from our community members themselves. And so, of course, Notorious Gangster Frogs, you should expect them to have some sort of notoriety to them, and we have little Easter eggs to exactly that place.
That is cool. That's funny, last night when I was wandering through here, I actually did look behind this wall, but I just didn't even think twice about it.
Well, this is the beauty. The metaverse really does need to be crammed filled with Easter eggs, especially when we have so much content being created by our community. There's a lot of fun stuff in here that you'll be able to find. In fact, we'll walk over here. We have all the way in this far corner. If you remember the menus I mentioned, you can even pick up a menu here and have a slightly closer look at them.
Oh, wow.
And you can see on the menu a bunch of different names for lots of different drinks, as well as nibbles. And these nibbles, as you may notice, are very much focusing around chickens. The reason we have chicken food in here is because, of course, we have over here in the VIP area a chickens only. Now, this is going to be something fun that's going to be introduced at a later point in time. But you can see the feathers on the floor, and you can see the VIP access at the top. So one of the most popular parts we have inside our Discord are chicken fights, where you can effectively buy chicken with your frog dollars, which again, they're not real dollars, but this is currency that you can earn by working or by, well, again, I don't want to give away all of the surprises, but inside Discord, there's a number of ways you can gamble in the casino and you can earn frog dollars, which in turn would allow you to then buy a chicken and then fight it against other chickens. And every time your chicken wins, the chances of your chicken remaining a winner increases. And so when we get to about an 80% success rate with a chicken, we get these pay-per-view events taking place in the Discord with theme tunes and with a whole bunch of an audience, and we sit and we watch how these chickens perform fighting one another. So this is something we'd love to see realized at a later point in time. And so this is a bit of a nod to the head to that part of the community who really, really loves fighting chickens.
Oh my gosh, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard. See, that's why I genuinely love Frogland, because it's just so community driven that, like, what you guys are building was just, a lot of it's just because people wanted it in the community. And I mean, that's what's awesome, and that's why I love Web3 at the end of the day. It's the projects that truly want their community, they'll focus in on that, and then you see, you know, what you guys are creating. And I think that that's the most fun part, because it's kind of just the wild west of development. Everybody kind of is just, you know, there's no right or wrong way of doing it because it's just so brand new, but everybody's just trying to find their little niche, and it's just so much more fun because it just, what it reminds me of really is like playing RuneScape back in like 2005 and 6. That was like when I just remember playing that as a little kid and thinking about like, oh wow, I can like get all of these items and like I can go and like mine resources or whatever, and then I can go sell it on an exchange. And the overall community involvement and trading with that was why I loved playing it so much as a kid. And that's kind of why I like haven't liked playing certain games as much growing up. But you know, I'm not a big gamer by any means. I love playing games and have my whole life, but I love Web3 just because of the fact it's just so much more than just a video game. Like, you're literally creating like a whole nother reality inside of, you know, the one we already live.
So RuneScape is actually a really good one to bring up because as much as so as a comparison to the Web3 space, because yeah, like it had all this trading, it also had was notoriously bad in terms of scammers in RuneScape, and you see a lot of that in the Web3 space as well, which is anyway. So I just found it to be a funny comparison.
Oh, I learned how to not get scammed by getting scammed in RuneScape as a kid.
Yeah, right. I mean, I remember even actually not too long ago, a friend's daughter playing Minecraft and watching some of those same like elements. When she was wanting to set up a trade with somebody, and somebody had called her a scammer, and she's like, "I'm not a scammer, I'm not." And I was like, "Oh, sweet, yeah, this is how the new generation is learning, you know, people's nefarious." Yeah.
Important to do your own research when it comes to any project. Look at the team, look at the track record, look at the background, and see what they've done in the past. And this will give you a good indicator for what the potential success could be of any project. And a big part of what we did with Frogland was we made a promise, which again was buy frog, get land, which is where Frogland came from, funny enough. And when you mentioned RuneScape, I felt it's probably worth Don Love digging into a little more detail, if you don't mind, Don Love, about how we're actually using the land itself. Because while we're building an environment that we feel has a higher level of graphical fidelity than any other metaverse out there, it's the utility, it's the innovation that we're introducing with how this game is going to be played. I touched on earlier on that we see metaverses very much as 3D social media platforms, yet we are adding this element of gamification. I'm working with sort of the former management team from Sony's flagship London studio, people who are skilled in making incredible experiences, and with some of our co-founders coming from sort of the gaming world themselves. It really is a passion of ours to push the bar on what technology is used for. And when you mentioned being able to craft, I think this is a really fun thing that, again, if I may, I'll ask Don Love to jump in a little bit and talk about what you can do with the land itself.
Well, okay, so we recently did announce that frogs and land will have resources associated with them. So frogs actually will be receiving different essences, which are themselves tokens, that are based on the boosts. Okay, so the different boost types are different tokens, and you can think of the boost level, at least in this respect. That's not to say that boosts won't be used in other ways as well later. The boost levels, you can think of as a weight mechanic on how much of that essence you get. Now, in terms of tokens and resources in the game, what is the actual demand for them? Ultimately, it's crafting. And so we haven't given much details yet, but essentially there will be a crafting system at a point in the future, and some things will be craftable and some things won't. Now, frog essence is one of those things that can be used in crafting, but is not itself craftable. So the only place to get it is from frogs. There are other resources, say for instance wood or oil, that will be on the land. And that's something which we will change up with each season, so that it's a limited amount each season, but then it can essentially be depleted, and being on a particular land, it may re-roll to something else. So you may get different resources.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, I think that's a really cool idea. And one other question I had to add on that was, so with all of the land and even the essence tokens and stuff, is this going to be like kind of like an inner marketplace inside of the game where you're going to be able, like maybe some of the Easter eggs that we see, maybe some of the other things that you guys have might be an NFT later down the line, where if you collect it in the game, then it has value on secondary markets? Or is some of the stuff that you guys plan on creating also going to be NFT, or more just specifically for the game itself?
Yes, there will 100%. We're going in the direction of there being things you can collect in the game, which are themselves NFTs, and we see the crafting system and economy as being a combination of ERC20 tokens, ERC1155 tokens, and ERC1121. So fungible, non-fungible, and semi-fungible tokens.
Okay, yeah, that was my question.
And this is going to be a metaverse not only of high fidelity, but ultimately of a lot of gameability. We want to build something that really settles, that scratches the itch for not only the NFT collectors in the space, but also for the degens, for the people that really want to see how this technology can be used most effectively, but also to have this notion that everything that they're doing in the space is going to have value in some shape or form. We really want to have a big focus on the artists as well, not only the graphical artists, but also the audio artists, because ultimately we feel this Web3 space is built to empower artists of all shapes and sizes and of all forms of media. And a great example of this is in fact the jukebox.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I was simply going to point out the jukebox, although that being said, as this will end up on YouTube, maybe you don't want to play any of the music, because while we do have the permissions from a band of frog holders called Too Many Zoos, and you can see the track listing up here on the wall, you can go over to the jukebox and you can click on it and you can type in a song, and depending on the track listing, that will actually kick in a song, which of course we're using spatial audio or binaural audio, which again means you are able to hear through either channel, and as you move away from the jukebox, you'll be able to sort of hear the music fade off into the distance. Wow. That being said, I don't get any copyright strikes, and so I don't know how that would work in this regard, but if you wanted to play any of the songs, you're more than welcome to. And I would reiterate that we do have the permission from the artists themselves to play this music inside the metaverse.
All right, cool. Well, I might as well try it then. Let's see here.
The bar, the Dragonfly Social Club. And as you approach the bar, you'll start hearing some audio. Now, this audio is created by, again, members of our community. And this is everything from a wonderful chap called Danicus Prime, an incredible voice actor who people may know from shows like Transformers. But we also have Drummer Boy, who's a double Grammy Award-winning music producer, sort of sharing some of his knowledge that he's found from the music space and from life in general. We have Light Leaps as well. We have some incredible members who have all helped co-create the audio that we're finding all around the Dragonfly Social Club. It's a really inclusive world where, again, simply by being a part of this community, not only will you get your free land, but you also get a say in how a world like this is created. We then develop in transparency. We then open up how we're building, and we go to our community for feedback every step of the way. Because again, gone are the days that you need to build something in stealth and then release it and hope people like it. When we directly with those individuals that want to spend time in the space and ensure the product that we build is in line with their expectations of what they would like to do in space.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's the most important thing, obviously. One question I have is, so when it comes to each and every frog, and you said how obviously there's going to be different benefits towards some of them earn higher essence than others, and then you'll kind of swap them around as far as the resources go and land. So is that going to be like a once a year type thing, or is there like a how often do you guys plan on doing that rotation?
So, we're thinking of that in seasons. We may tweak that, but we've been thinking that a season is probably like kind of 6 weeks to 3 months kind of thing.
Okay.
And the idea there being that if you don't optimize your resource extraction, there may be some leftover resources at the end of that time. If you do optimize, that will take some cost to get the right permitting and extractors to get more resources out, but you could finish your resources before that time. And this is also where the ideas around deeds comes in, that actually people don't own an XY coordinate, so they can occupy it for as long as they want, but they own a deed and they use a deed to take occupancy of a pad of a particular location. So somebody who is focused on optimizing for resources could try and extract the resources all really fast, and then go to the planning commission to update which pad they're occupying using their deed. They can go after more resources.
Okay. So then when it comes to the buy frog, get land, everybody that has a frog is going to get one deed, I'm assuming? That's how it'll work?
Yeah.
Okay. And so then...
And sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so then once you have your deed, is it going to just be are they like, so certain lands are going to produce more or less resources, correct? Or are they all going to be kind of the same?
Very much there will be different resources on different lands. Some of it will be slanted based on the biome you're in. Are you in an urban biome? Are you in the forests? Are you on the mountains? But that's part of the thing of the seasons.
Okay.
Essentially, then randomize that. So then, if you choose not to chase resources and you just like where your location is, and you don't want to move use your deed to essentially move the land you're on around, you could remain in the same place, and with each season those resources available to you get re-rolled, so that you could get some great wins, and you could get some seasons where you didn't get as lucky.
That's pretty freaking cool. Does the rarity of the frog have any impact on the deed itself? What the resources produce?
No.
Okay.
No. Very much. I mean, we're looking at this as the same way you would look at a secondary drop for lots of things. Whether it be dogs or mutants to apes, whether you look at it as any of the other comparisons one could make. I mean, I think we're very much planting that to rarity. Is kind of making the rich richer, as opposed to giving everyone who's interested in the project another shot at success, whether they want to then use that to get a lead in the game, or whether they want to say, well, actually, I'm okay with having a less red, and swapping this with somebody else plus some ETH because they wanted to take some profit but remain in.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, I like that idea because you kind of hit it right on the head with the rich get richer, and that's kind of something that it's just kind of the way of life and just how it's always kind of worked. But it is kind of cool to see you guys are trying to do something with that so that everybody does get an opportunity to get in. Because what I've noticed with some of these projects that I've wanted to get in is, I mean, if you miss out and you're just not one of the guys that's early on to the whitelist or anything, like by the time the secondary markets roll around, you're kind of priced out of being able to even participate. And especially with something like a video game, like I mean, realistically, the people that are playing it are most of them aren't going to have a ton of money to just throw around and spend $1,000 just to get one floor NFT to play. Like most people aren't going to do that. And so, what is your thoughts with what happens if the price of these NFTs just goes so crazy and it kind of pushes out the little guy in the process? Do you guys have any sort of thoughts on how you would kind of try and promote more involvement with new members, like maybe a season 2 of New Frogs or another character or something like that?
So, there's a few facets to this. Well, certainly, we don't want to punish whales, but we also don't want to favor them, so they have any unnatural advantage. And there'll always be some element of people with more economic resources have some advantages, but as long as it's not an exponential, as long as it's linear, that then is a fair playing ground. With regards to other collections, we have no plans to release more frogs, and I think a lot of people would be upset if we did. But we will certainly release other NFTs and do some other drops along the way. We have some secrets in the background, so some plans. There's this fine balance between co-creation and reserving some elements of surprise for people. In terms of then the actual playability, so we very much see New Pangea and Frogland as free to play, and I like to segment it into categories of there should be reasons of fun and economic potential to play the game, to have land, and to have a frog, and those should be independent. So I very much want people in there who don't have frogs and don't have land in there playing the game and able to benefit both through their effort and have fun. And that's one part of the answer. I mean, also not high up on our build-out list in terms of infrastructure, in terms of there's a lot of things to get off first, would be things like renting. So, I mean, we've seen this in a lot of games as well, where, say, there will be certain things reserved that you do need a frog to get. Say, perhaps there's a particular item that, to try and get that drop, you actually need to have a frog.
Right.
That can also create a rental market. Well,
You're right.
somebody could rent out their frogs.
See, that's such an interesting thing, is the fact that through DeFi we're going to be able to take our assets, our NFT assets, and be able to kind of leverage them to earn a return, whether it's renting it out or whether it's something else. That's a really crazy thought to think about, the fact that, I mean, I can own an NFT, it's guaranteed in the future to get airdrops, and so that kind of cements more value to it. With the airdrops, I can create more value in the game, which ultimately is just a self-serving cycle. And I think that's really, really cool that, for the first time ever, we can kind of play a video game, but then our video games function also as an asset that can do a number of things in-game. I mean, it's the reasons why I loved role-playing games growing up in a big way, just being able to kind of free roam amongst the world, being able to kind of collect your own resources. The only difference is with Web3, those resources actually have real value, and it's I can, you can sell it for real money if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally, and we very much, plan there to be working with existing ecosystems and products that fit our needs as well. So, I mean, there are things out there like NFTX, which is going to be very useful to certain things that we're building, and exchanges like SushiSwap, where we don't need to go and build that to use it in our world. I mean, that's one of the beauties of this space is composability. Very much. Ultimately, though, all economic value in terms of frogs, in terms of the resources in world, essentially come down to how that translates to fun in the game. That's really what will create a long-term demand. Because if people don't want to be crafting and using items for fun in the game, then resources, accumulating resources, doesn't really have a long-term sustainable driver. If it does, well then it really hits that home run of having an internal economy and a lot of fun that's really driving it.
Right. See, and that's kind of been one of my thoughts with Web3 and being in early to see kind of DeFi taking off and then to see NFTs starting to take off shortly after. One of the things that I kind of told my friends over the last couple of years was that, in the future, so many of these jobs are going to be automated, and it's kind of a big fearful thought to a lot of people that, oh no, maybe my job won't be here in 5 to 10 years or something. But when I look at the way that everything's kind of transitioning, I mean, yeah, like maybe some of those factory jobs and some of these other things will be kind of taken away and automated. But at the same time, with like what we're seeing with NFTs and the metaverse and stuff is, people are making more than they ever spent 10 years working a job off of just being early to some of these things. And I mean, a lot of that has to do with them being early. But I mean, long term, when this stuff is kind of just in everyday life, I mean, a lot of people are going to be sitting there playing video games, transitioning, between each game, checking their farms, checking their resources, doing all of their stuff, and they're going to be earning more than a doctor would just by simply playing in the metaverse. And that's kind of what I thought would happen in the future was, there might be less jobs, but the way that we'll make money isn't really like working a job in the future anyways. And so it's kind of this big transition that I think is really cool. A lot of people think is a little bit fearful, but to see how much value a project like you guys are creating here with Frogland, I just only see how this is going to be something that more people can get into. It doesn't have a huge educational barrier like a lot of things do in the world, and you can actually make a good amount of money doing it in the process just by having fun.
Yeah, I mean, we live in the most economically productive time ever. I mean, if we're looking on, the scale of like this year versus last year, things like that, we might go, oh, it's gone slightly down, it's gone slightly up. But if we're talking about decades or centuries, this is part of the complaint that you sometimes hear, justifiably so, out of America is like, hey, stock market go up, but salaries aren't going up, and inflation is going up, and so it makes no sense that like we have this growing productivity and yet a concentration of ownership. And I mean, it may or may not be painful, and it doesn't have to be painful, but this is why we need decentralization in a lot of things, and to shake up certain systems, because ultimately that's got to give at some point. That can't continue on that trend. Otherwise, you end up with a few owning everything and nobody to buy the things they can. Yeah, very much. I think we are going through some interesting changes now and in the future. And systems like these, systems like Web3, are going to be a big part of how we change that. I mean, I think so. A very interesting comment I heard recently, which rang true for me, was how DAOs may not end up replacing companies, but might replace a lot of VC, where you still have a lot of companies which have their own internal structures for efficiency, and lots of people in it may or may not realize that actually their investors are a DAO. And really that's, I think, the layer where you can get this distributed ownership, this distributed access to equity in the space, and still carry over some of the benefits and learnings that we historically have in growth and productivity.
So I'm curious, what is it that you guys are most excited about with the next, let's say, the next 1 year, what are you guys most excited about? Something developing, releases and whatnot. What would you guys say is your number one thing that you're just the most excited about to complete this year?
Good question. Of course, we have our upcoming free land claim for all of our Notorious Frog holders in the first half of June. And so anyone who's been with the project for any amount of time will be able to then claim their free plot of land. And as Don Love mentioned, there will be different biomes with different styles for the land itself, each with somewhat slightly different utility according to what tokens you may get or what you may be able to do on that land itself. So that has been a big focus. As soon as we accomplish the land delivery, so to speak, we'll be opening up the next areas, the main street, the area directly outside of this club. And from that, we'll then start introducing our partner projects, other projects that build their own communal spaces and subsequent land sales for their communities, which will, again, create the funding necessary to continue to build this world out without relying on the traditional methods of fundraising.
Right.
So, I think what we should do within a year is this cross-pollination between different communities inside this one overarching metaverse called New Pangea. But over to you, Don Love.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's probably a tie between when we release the planning commission, so people can apply their deeds to a location on the map and start earning resources, and actually the gameplay and competition around that as people as we get to see what people think, what they value, how they strategize, and crafting system. We haven't released much details about crafting system, but it's a very interesting, fun thing to work on, and it's something that post deeds is going to take a lot of my and a few of the members of the team's focus, so probably those two things are top of mind for me. I do like Snoop's answer though of also the partner project stuff. I mean, I think Metaverse Land, sometimes people I don't think we need to think about Metaverse Land in scarcity in the same way as people necessarily think of certain collections with scarcity. I think scarcity or value comes more from what you do to your land, the community you surround yourself with, essentially vibes. I mean, if DeFi is money Legos, I like to think of NFTs and Metaverse as culture Legos.
That's an interesting thought. It's very true. That's such an interesting thing to think about. I mean, that really is what when it comes to crypto, you have like the crypto community and stuff, but that's why I've gotten so much more enjoyment out of NFTs, is because it seems like this is kind of like the physical manifestation of the culture in crypto. Like everybody that's been in it now has a way to express themselves. The people that have been in it that are now creating the ideas, it's all very much community inspired, and that's why I love Frogland. Is the thing you can't replicate in other communities is community first off, but the culture from the community itself. That's why I love Frogland so much. It's that you come into the Discord, you can talk with people, you get on Twitter, you can talk with people, everybody's super respectful. It's almost like you're inside the game without actually being inside the game, and that's you only get that through culture, and you can definitely see that you guys have a lot of supporters in that way. One thing I'm curious to know is when it comes to these partner projects, and you guys are basically the ones just building out not only your metaverse but also the metaverses for them. What are those other projects, and then what is like the time frame that you think they will be kind of in the game and we can kind of interact with them a little bit, even just like kind of how we are right now?
So it's always tricky to put an exact time frame when you come to building something that's never been built before. Our focus has been primarily building Frogland out and, of course, delivering the land to our community members, to our Notorious Frog holders, before we start bringing on the task of developing another district. But if people have been paying attention, back in, I think it was maybe October, November, thereabouts, the Guttercat Gang announced their partnership with us as have another project called the Wicked Craniums. We've been talking to a number of other projects as well, and we ultimately will be running these projects past our community to get their feedback on who we feel the next projects to come on board into this space will be. So effectively, the partner districts will come at a later point after the land claim has taken place, and we've been building out Frogland itself a little bit more, because what you see here is very much a vertical slice. It's not a fully finished product, and there's a lot more to Frogland than meets the eye. So we need to do our sort of QA testing, so to speak, working with our community members to make sure what we're building has that fun level before we start bringing in levels of complexity with other projects themselves. But ultimately, the model that we have here is to always work with the community that allows us to scale. Because as the space continues to grow, new projects will come about, and we find the notorious theme of these projects, certainly with our collection, but also with others, will add for a lot of fun gamified elements that we've not yet seen before in the Web3 space at all.
Right.
I mean, also something to note there is, when we're building out those elements for our, for Frogland, for our primary initial community, it's also building a lot of reusable paths where, if we look at the partner district of Guttercats, for instance, there'll be a lot of similarities in land contracts and such, but there also may be some differences. But it becomes, easier to provide some difference, tweak it, give it its own flavor, give it its own aesthetic in the 3D world. But there are all these underlying pieces that, provide a lot of the same functionality. So yeah, I guess we're using Frogland to get it to our community first, but also build out the hard pieces that we can then reuse to take not the same amount of time to get our partner projects out.
Right.
Yeah. We see a lot of these metaverse spaces out on at the moment, and we hear this word metaverses, which I think is incredibly incorrect, because of course there is only one internet. You don't have many internets. And we see the metaverse very much like a transition from a two-dimensional internet to a three-dimensional internet. So what we're trying to do here not only is build out some fun worlds for people to enjoy, spend time, and to earn, but also to build out the standards that developers already know and embrace, so that ultimately this thing could become a much larger beast than even one team themselves would be able to construct. So by being able to introduce different communities and set the precedent by how these worlds could be built, we'd like to see this become a much larger space itself, which effectively will have the standards that anyone will be able to build, develop, and well. So this is very much further down the line, but this is really the idea of what we're trying to build here, is to foster these universal standards that developers already embrace, and to start building in a new manner that really leverages Web3 technology, gamified elements, high quality of artwork, and immersive.
Right. Yeah, that's really neat. It's like you guys are the layer one of NFTs. And that's kind of, what I used to tell people when it came to investing was just always, focus on the type of projects that are allowing the development of new projects under it, because at the end of the day we have no idea which of these are going to take off in crypto. We don't know which of these might solve some major problem that is just highly valuable. And so the more projects that you think are valuable, that kind of fit the model and your long-term vision that you can bring on, the more it overall just helps the entirety of the entire metaverse. And I think that that's a really cool thing that you guys are going to be doing. And with having these other communities inside of that, into this one giant metaverse, I think that that's really interesting, because you're kind of going to get little aspects of what this team wants to build, what this team might want to build, but then at the end of the day it's kind of all within the same big community. And so do you guys have do you plan on being able to let the different communities kind of walk in between worlds, or is it going to be a little bit more focused on specifically what each project wants to do. They might be a little bit more secular or something.
Well, I mean, we very much, that's why we have New Pangea. We do see that as a continuous land space, and that is where these partner projects will feature. So Frogland is in New, as will be Gutterville. And I mean, I think a lot of the future is, how do we make economically viable personalization, as opposed to, the old model of economies of scale. I mean, that's something we see in the physical meat space, as I like to call it as well. I mean, it very much, with 3D printers, like the promise of 3D printers is to drop the production cost of whatever it be, utensils, cutlery, crockery, to a point where you can have super unique designs and not worry about what that means in terms of cost, that you don't need plastic molds and to be selling at least 1 million of them for it to be cost effective. I mean, I think that's also one of the reasons we see the attractiveness of governance and things like that through things like NFTs, rather than just say an Aave token, because you can be part of a community where you still have individual expression by being part, by being unique in a collection, while still being part of a community that is the wider collection. Whereas things like governance tokens, like an Aave token, it doesn't quite have that same aspect. It's only got like uniform expression across the community. So you can't connect with it as much as.
Right. What's been like one of the hardest, or what I should say, what's been the most challenging problem that you guys have run into with the Web3 and just trying to kind of develop all of this stuff that you've had over the last, year? What's kind of been the biggest challenge or hurdle that you guys have tried to have to make it through, or maybe still currently trying to figure out?
Yeah, and so to me, I would say it's the manner in which the content gets created. Again, traditionally, especially working with a sort of such a world-renowned game development studio, the idea is when you build an application in the old Web 2 world, you have a specific game design document, you have a model, you have an ethos, and you have a manner in which that's created. But we've started again. We started from scratch, and we're building in a way that's never been seen before. And so with that, there's always ways that need to be taken into account that are not necessarily immediately apparent. And coming up with the look and the feel of this world was tricky, because of course we've got to bear in mind what we're trying to do here is build in a bit of this natural look of these frogs themselves, but also a Notorious feel, an Art Deco feel, but also a futuristic feel, taking a number of different styles and merging them in. And in fact, the reason we managed to bring on board a terrific branding gentleman to assist with this, we picked him specifically due to his work on Boardwalk Empire, which we felt was a good Notorious feel for what we're building. But once these game development studios that we're working with realized how this can now be built without these stuffy board executive meetings and pitch decks and all of the things that were needed in the Web 2 world, they absolutely fell in love and have effectively cancelled a whole bunch of the other projects that they're working on simply to be able to dive straight into this Web 3 world. And so it took months to be able to bring a Web 2 company who only knew how to make high-polished video games to understand what it is to be in the NFT space, to be a part of a Web3 community, and to know how to build for the degens of this world. And that was, I'd say, probably the trickiest thing to do. It took us months before we could even start development on an education process. And we've seen this because ultimately a lot of the metaverses that are out there are built by Web3 engineers who are leveraging open source gaming platforms. as opposed to making a game from scratch, which is a much trickier thing to do. And so I think that nuance of how you go about building something in a new way for the first time was definitely the trickiest thing that I think we had to overcome. But now that we've fallen into the cadence where people know how to build and how to deliver and work with a community to co-create everything you see around you, was both a long-winded but also an incredibly valuable experience, because we've now built the template and the foundation for us to be able to build off of it, to introduce and invite other members of a community or other communities altogether into the same space.
Probably what I personally found hardest is keeping my damn mouth shut. So, in terms of, obviously, that balance between community input and then also having some things for surprise. I've been quite good at not spilling the beans on certain things, but it's not within my nature.
I can only imagine. I mean, when it comes to creating something that you're really passionate about, but then on top of that, like, it's Notorious Frogs, where you guys are kind of like really paving the way for a lot of things, and a lot of stuff that you guys have kind of had to figure out. It's all just, you have no idea where to go about doing it besides just go about doing it. It's the only way to figure it out. And so I think it's really cool that you guys are actually able to kind of go through and problem solve all of this stuff, because the space needs people like you that are going to be able to go and solve all the issues so that it's easy for everybody else to come through and build and kind of not have to deal with so much of the same stuff. And that's really cool. Another reason why I love this project so much is when you compare it to what else is out there. I mean, in my opinion, it's just so far above most other projects, and specifically all the other projects I've looked at, just the detail and everything. But I love the overall theme of the project itself. And so I am curious, what was this exact frog theme? Why frogs? Why frogs and maybe not something else? And then why in like the crime detective type vibe? I'm curious to hear that.
Well, so Frogs, it was Frogs from the beginning. Actually, Snoop Frog put the team together with D.I.Y, his partner, and she's had a long, deep love of frogs, and so that's where the initial seed came from. And Snoop Frog reached out to each of us and he assembled the initial team, and then a couple within the team reached out and added a couple other people. With that part, but then Notorious Frogs, that really came. It came out from iterating on the art, and kind of just creatively exploring together. Trying on different names, trying on different themes, until we found something that we all loved, and that stuck, and that we thought had lots of space for creativity and depth. So that came later through the art iteration process. That's particularly new on.
Yeah. If Dee Dee was here, she could probably regale you with a number of childhood stories about her fascination with frogs. But ultimately, we felt it was so fitting because, again, the Web3 world is a new world, and with this, we need to look at things differently. And with New Pangea as a sort of a new terrain emerging from the waters, of course, the amphibians being the first creatures to crawl out, and with amphibians themselves being so androgynous, and with the very notion that people feel connected with their PFPs. We see them very much as, I think I mentioned earlier, metaverses themselves are similar to like 3D social media platform. And starting fresh, to be able to have an online environment that isn't your real name with your real life photographs, but instead is an avatar that you've chosen, we felt was a very powerful thing. And the androgynous nature of frogs themselves, we felt was something that we really needed to embrace more so than anything. But there are many, many reasons why frogs themselves, and of course, certainly with the background of some of the Hollywood creative directors that we have involved in the project, these frogs quickly turned very notorious. So it was really an evolution, and that is, I think, really the takeaway from everything we're doing at Frogland is we're evolving with the space, and we're moving into something that has never been done before. What you can see here, incidentally, these are placeholder avatars. Of course, if you may have noticed on the Notorious Frogs, and maybe a little bit of alpha for anyone who watches this video, definitely pay attention to the boosts and to the levels. While you get applications like rarity tools that will point out rarities based on the properties of the NFTs, we kept a close guarded secret for the first while in Frogland, which was pay attention to levels and boosts. Ultimately, these are traits that will be applicable inside the metaverse themselves. Anywhere from your charisma to your strength to your dexterity, even to your sort of your unknown boosts or your sort of incendiary boosts or to your silly boosts, and there's a whole bunch that is really going to take effect once you receive your Notorious Frog avatars that will be more custom to the avatars that you have themselves in your wallet, as opposed to a number of placeholders. So again, these were concept works that we put together, but we really feel that this new age of a metaverse, it needs to still have that element of anonymity. This whole notion of sort of these social media platforms forcing users to use their real life identities inside these spaces, I think kind of defeats the point of what a metaverse can and should be used for.
Right.
So ideally, pick the frog that you love and then come into a world and be who you want to be. That will certainly be sometime after the next area. So again, first and foremost, we want to do one thing at a time and do it very well. And so presently, we initially created the NFT collection, the frogs themselves. We then moved on to building the vertical slice, the environment that you know. We will then move on to the land claim itself and the land sales, at which point we will then introduce the other districts within, the other areas, I should say, within Frogland and then partner district. And along that process, then the avatars will become made available to our communities. Lovely. And Lollyhops, just so you know, is our sort of community manager and does an absolutely incredible job inside the Discord. And so I'd say anyone who's listening to this and hasn't hopped into the Frogland Discord, check it out, because there's we're really pushing the bounds of what's possible inside a Discord channel.
Yeah. By the way, anybody watching this video, I'm going to link everything as far as information goes. I'll link the website. I'll link an invite for their Discord server. I'll link their collection on Rarity Sniper, but I'm mainly going to edit that stuff into the video itself after so that you guys can go and look for a frog. Big takeaway here. Anybody that does go and buy one of these frogs on OpenSea, they are going to have the land attachment to that, and so if you guys do end up getting a frog, you're going to get a deed of the land that's going to be attached to it, and specifically with the deed, the more boost you have, the more of a certain resource that you're going to get when the release of that comes. So I'll break all of that stuff down for you, but the big thing is if you do want to get access to further airdrops, anything like that, make sure you guys get a frog. If you've been watching my channel or you've been subscribed, chances are you probably already own one, but just remember that if you do want to actually get into some of the stuff they're going to be releasing, you got to own a frog.
I think that was a fantastic TLDR. So again, we thank you ever so much, D.I.Y. It's been an absolute pleasure having you a member in the community, and we look forward to what comes next.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously, I've never even recorded a video like this or anything with a project. I really try not to do anything like that for the most part. But obviously, this is something I've been personally invested in from the very, very beginning of the whole project. So it's something I really genuinely believe in, and I want to support. And so if you guys do want to make another video later down the line, maybe at the point of the deed release and whatever it is, I'd be happy to do this and kind of make it a little segment on the channel, even if it was just on Twitter Spaces or something.
Amazing.
Thank you, sir. That sounds like a lot of fun. And it really has been a pleasure hanging out and chatting.
Amazing.
Sweet.
One final thing, I don't know if we actually had a chance to walk over there, but we do have sort of a little taste on what's to come in terms of the games. So just a little piece of interactivity. You do have a fun little dice game that we'll be able to play. So if you wanted to, as we're chatting, this could have been a good use of time. Sort of just come over to the dice cup, and if you click on the dice cup, you'll be able to have a little game of dice. And we've kept this fairly open-ended because there's a number of different games that can be played using dice. So we wanted users to figure out what they enjoyed the most. But we will be expanding on different kinds of mini games and experiences that you'll be able to do not only inside the Dragonfly but also outside the spaces. Yeah, it's been just a lot of fun developing this, and I couldn't have done it without our community.
Are you guys going to be, so like when it comes to these little games like this and even the chicken fighting, is that going to be for like your coins in the game?
Good question, and one we haven't announced publicly yet, so I probably should bite my tongue before I get into any trouble. But I think you're thinking along the right track.
Cool.
Put it that way.
Yeah, I guess I'll say most things in Frogland we like to be open to all, but have some optional economic stuff involved as well.
Right.
We don't want to gatekeep. At the same time, want to incentivize.
Right, of course. I kind of figured when I saw the dice game and then you guys talked about the chicken fighting that there's probably going to be some sort of token or something, I would assume. Something along the lines. Either way, being able to... That was one of the cool things that I wanted to see in Web3 was to be able to go play poker and like actually just like be in the game and go play poker and make a little bit of like ETH on the side if I won or something. But even if it was just tokens, it doesn't really matter. It's all the same thing. It's just more of the ability to play in game and then be able to use the proceedings to do stuff with it. I think it's freaking hilarious that... So the chicken fighting thing was a community? People came up with that in the community?
Yeah, so we we started introducing sort of poker and blackjack and all sorts of fun stuff, and sooner or later, Lollyhops had the sort of the great idea to have something a little more unique, let's just call it. With that, we had some snail races and some greyhound races and horse races, but the chicken fighting was definitely the preferable path. Yeah, you can literally just go into the Discord, type in $buy chicken to buy a chicken, and then you can $CF for cockfighting, and we'll keep it a little PG at the moment. But yes, you can then battle your chickens, and every time your chicken wins, it ranks up a little bit more. If it dies, your chicken dies, and then ends up on the menu.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. That is one of the coolest things. Oh my gosh. Well, I really appreciate you guys hanging out in here and kind of giving me a little insight on the project. I'm really, really excited about everything that you guys have going, and obviously the community should feel nothing that, I mean, this is in great hands, and I'm sure that they all recognize that as well. And so thank you guys so much for having me on. Thanks for, giving me this little tour of your demo. And, I look forward to making another video and update when you guys release some more stuff, because I'm really looking forward to everything long term with this.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It's an absolute pleasure. And we look forward to our next conversation in the metaverse.
Yes, sir. Well, you guys have a good day, and I will catch you in the next one.
Thanks so much. Good ribbon, sir.
Good ribbon.